everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Jones, and today we're going to start the new year and the new decade off with a bang, a mukbang that is, or mukbang, however you want to say it. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, but if you don't know what a mukbang is, it's basically eating and talking. And I happened to get a new air fryer for Christmas, which I was really excited about. I've been wanting one for a couple of years, and my boyfriend Jack pulled through for me, so thank you, Jack. So I've been experimenting cooking some different types of foods with the air fryer, and I went crazy this morning and tried a bunch of different stuff. So I will be inserting some footage as I'm talking on how I made all this delicious food with an air fryer. So I didn't do it completely oil-free. You can do totally oil-free in an air fryer, but I do like to add a little bit of oil to the vegetables just to help the spices and stuff stick to the veggies and just make it a little bit crispier, a little bit tastier. I used olive oil. And so here I have some roasted broccoli with garlic, and here I have some kale chips that I made sort of a cheesy flavor by adding nutritional yeast, and I used some of this 21 seasoning salute from Trader Joe's, and they came out so unbelievably crispy. They just kind of like melt in your mouth. And I've made kale chips a couple of times before in a regular oven, and they never seem to turn out quite right. But I think these came out absolutely perfect. So I'm really looking forward to munching on some of those. And I also made some little kind of pizza things. I'm not sure what you would call them, but I was just using stuff I had in my refrigerator already. And so I had about half a package of crescent rolls from Trader Joe's, you know, the kind that come in a tube, and you just roll them up into little crescent rolls. And so I decided to make sort of like a little calzone thing out of them. They have pasta sauce, organic pasta sauce, and some Daya mozzarella shreds in there, and that's it. And then I just pressed them together and kind of crimped the edges with a fork so that that would help the edges stick together, kind of like you would do with a pie. And I made a couple of recipes from one of my favorite YouTubers. She has a cookbook out called Sweet Potato Soul. This is the cookbook. I got this last year for Christmas, and it is one of my favorite cookbooks. Everything I've made out of there has been so delicious. And so I'm trying a couple of recipes that I haven't tried yet, but I've been wanting to. So I made some maple tempeh bacon, and this is in her cookbook. Of course, she doesn't do them in the air fryer in her cookbook, so this was a little experiment. And I also made some of her tahini cookies. They have tahini, oats, chocolate chips, and sweet potato. The recipe calls for pecans, but I didn't have any, so I used walnuts instead. Then I had some leftover sweet potato from making those, so I just sliced it into these rounds and seasoned it and cooked these like you would potato wedges, which is one of the most popular things for people to make in an air fryer, is potato wedges or fries, although they're not fried. And then I have a couple of dipping sauces for things. I used some of the leftover pasta sauce that I used for these. Again, it was just something I had left over in my refrigerator. I also have some maple mustard dressing, which is one of my recipes that I have in my free ebook. It is 5 easy vegan on the go-to recipes that are just really easy recipes that I use all the time for taking on the go. They're great for breakfast or lunch or even for dinner. So if you want some really easy vegan recipes, I will leave a link to the landing page in the description box below, so please check that out. So since this is a mukbang, and mukbangs are usually eating and talking at the same time, I am going to be sharing with you my vegan story. The reason I'm sharing this today is partly because it is a new year and a new decade, and at the new year People like to make all kinds of resolutions on, changes in their diet or their lifestyle, trying to get healthy, trying to work out more, etc. And a lot of people use that opportunity to change to a vegan diet. And I did this myself a couple of years ago. It was a lot easier for me than it would be for some people because I've actually been a vegetarian for 33 years now. And a good portion of that, when I was in my 20s, I was vegan. I wasn't a perfect vegan, but I was largely vegan, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as I go along. But I really think that to be truly successful in transitioning to a vegan diet, and I am very intentional in using that word transition, that you need to just like take it at your own pace. You don't have to go totally cold turkey at once. Maybe that works for some people, but that approach has never worked for me. And in fact, over the last 33 years, I have kind of transitioned back and forth between vegan and vegetarian. There were times where I ate cheese and eggs and times when I didn't. And of course now I am making a very conscious effort not to eat any sort of animal products. So I thought that by sharing my vegan story, which a lot of vegans on YouTube do, that it might help give you a little inspiration, might help guide you a little bit on your way, on your own transition, and to know that it's okay if you're not perfect about it. It does take time. Everything that is worth doing takes some time. And when you start a new diet, especially one that is switching to a really healthy, whole foods, plant-based diet, there is a lot to learn and a lot to get used to, especially if you've been a big meat eater all this time. Maybe you're a meat and potatoes type of person, and your doctor has told you you need to change your diet, and you're like, oh my god, how do I do this? Well, I'm going to help you along the way, and in future videos I'm also going to be giving you a lot of tips and recipes to help you along your journey. So one thing I want to mention before I get into my story, and it has to do with that transitioning period that people will likely be going through, is that you really need to have a strong why. Now, there are three major whys that successful vegans have. One of those, of course, is diet. Maybe you start out wanting to lose weight or just wanting to get healthier. Maybe you were diagnosed with some kind of health problem and your doctor told you that you need to change your diet and change your lifestyle, or, which isn't good. So one of the other reasons is animal welfare, the ethical treatment of animals, that is. A lot of vegans and vegetarians decide to stop eating meat and dairy because they are concerned about the welfare of animals. And sometimes, like with myself, that kind of comes in later after you've started eating a plant-based diet for health reasons. Maybe later on you start to realize that you don't want to be eating animals or participating in any cruelty to animals. For me, that was something that came a little bit later, and especially with the vegan part of it, when I transitioned 2 years ago, it was largely because I started learning about how animals are treated in the dairy industry, and I had no idea before. I had not been eating meat for over 30 years already, so I knew I didn't want to participate in any of the treatment of animals that go to slaughter for meat. I didn't want to be eating meat. I love animals. Why would I want to eat them? But I had no idea about how animals are treated in the dairy industry. And I'm not going to go into depth about that here. There are lots of videos out there talking about that, and maybe I'll talk more about that in a future video, but that is another big reason why people decide to go vegan. The third is the environment. The meat industry is really bad for our environment, and our environment is in really bad shape already. So if you want to make an impact on the health of the environment, going vegan is a great way to do that. And again, there are lots of videos on that. Maybe I'll do another one in the future, but I'm not going to really go into detail right there. Just remember that to be successful in transitioning to a vegan diet and a vegan lifestyle, or even if you're just cutting down on meat, you don't necessarily have to be going vegan. You could be going vegetarian or just eating less meat and dairy in general. You need to have a really strong why, or it's just not going to last. So, enough talking about that. Now I'm going to start enjoying some food and tell you about my own vegan journey. So, I am going to start out with some of these delicious foods. I can't even decide what I'm going to start with. And I admit I have tasted a couple things because I wanted to try them when they were really warm right out of the air fryer. But I think I'm going to start with some of this tempeh bacon. And let's take a bite. Maybe dip some. That is really good. It has a lot of flavor. And really good with ketchup too. Really easy to make. I mean, really, you just get a block of tempeh, slice it up into thin slices like this, and then it's a marinade that just has a few simple ingredients, and you marinate the tempeh for a couple hours, or I did mine overnight, and then I just put it in the air fryer. I used the little rack that comes with it, just so the air would really circulate around it and make it nice and crisp. And this is really good. I'm definitely going to be making more of that in the future. I haven't really tried one of these sweet potato slices yet. I just soaked these in water for about 30 minutes because that's what the instruction book with the air fryer said to do. And that seemed to work pretty well. The air fryer cookbook doesn't have very many recipes in it. It only has about a dozen recipes, and a few of them are meat. So all this really is an experiment for me. But anyway, to get to my story, my journey kind of started when I was about 12 years old, really. And I am 51 now, so it's been a long time, a very long journey, almost 40 years. But my father died of pancreatic cancer when he was 46 years old, and I was 12 years old. And he had actually been sick for quite some time, so I think he was first diagnosed with cancer when I was about 9 years old. You know, I had to witness him wasting away. He was really a robust kind of man, and I really saw him waste away to nothing. I mean, by the time he passed, he was really just skin and bones. And that was really hard on me and my brother, who's 6 years older than me. But I was at a really vulnerable time in my life. You know, I was about to become a teenager, starting to go through puberty. I was only in 7th grade, and my father really meant a lot to me. So it was very difficult. And after he died, I think my brother and I both sort of ate our feelings. I mean, we both gained a lot of weight. I know for myself that I started binging a lot, particularly with foods like chocolate and baked goods. I mean, I used to go through like a whole bag of Reese's peanut butter cups, like one of those big bags you get at Halloween, or tubs of frosting, or I would go to the store and buy Pillsbury, frozen turnovers, and there's like 4 of them in a box, and they have 1,000,000 calories each, but I would bake them and eat all 4 by myself pretty much in one sitting. That kind of thing. And I gained a lot of weight, particularly in my freshman year of high school. I'm gonna eat some more of this. And I also started drinking when I was 13 years old. I started drinking and smoking pot, and throughout my entire teenage years from 13 to about 18, I had a serious problem with alcohol, and I was a real party girl. I just lived for going out and partying and hung out with a lot of people that liked to party too. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I was having some really serious health issues. All through my senior year, starting from like day one, I had a string of different health problems. I mean, they were all kind of unrelated, but I think that my immune system was really down because of my diet and because of the drinking and the partying and not getting enough sleep. And yeah, my health was just really bad, and I missed a lot of school and barely graduated from high school. And then shortly after I graduated from high school, I was having some severe migraine headaches. Well, it's a lot harder to like eat and talk than I thought it was going to be. But I started having these really, really bad migraine headaches and migraine stomach aches. And yes, that is a thing. Migraine stomach aches are for real. But, it was bad. I mean, really, really bad headaches, really, really bad stomach aches, and no pain reliever or anything would make it go away. And I seriously felt like I just wanted to die. Not that I felt suicidal or anything like that, but I just felt like I would rather die than feel that bad. I mean, I was just in a lot of pain. I was totally miserable. So my mom took me to the doctor, and they did some blood work, and the blood work came back showing that I had high cholesterol, high triglycerides, high blood sugar, and they told me that my arteries were so clogged that I could have a heart attack any day. I was 17 years old, and here my doctor was telling me I could have a heart attack. I mean, talk about a wake-up call. That was just incredible. I mean, I didn't even know that that was possible. I really want to try this thing out. It's gotten kind of cold now, but it should still be good. Put a little bit of extra sauce on there. These probably aren't the best thing. They do have a lot of calories and fat, but everything else here is like whole food ingredients, so I think I can cheat a little bit with this. That's good. A little bit of vegan junk food doesn't hurt once in a while. Yummy. So, my doctor gave me a list of foods ranked in order of highest saturated fat on down, and it was pretty much all meats and cheeses. And they told me not to eat eggs whatsoever. No eggs, nothing with eggs in it, just no eggs. I had to quit eating eggs completely. And they told me not to eat any foods that had hydrogenated oils in it. So there went my favorite peanut butter. And then, like I said, they gave me this list with all these foods ranked from highest saturated fat. And of course, I think the number one was red meat, and then cheese, which was like hard cheeses like cheddar and jack. And then I'm not sure exactly what was after that. But they also said to start eating more whole grains and, of course, more vegetables and fruits. Now, I wasn't a huge vegetable eater. I was a very picky eater as a kid and as a teenager, and I didn't eat a whole lot of vegetables. And I didn't eat that much meat. I didn't like seafood at all. No fish, no seafood. The only thing I would tolerate was tuna salad on crackers. I just didn't like seafood at all. So that wasn't, hard for me to give up because I pretty much didn't eat it anyway. And I didn't really like ham or pork that much. I loved bacon. I have to admit, I really loved bacon and sausage. Except sausage sometimes grossed me out because of all the gristly fat in there. But I ate a lot of chicken, and I did eat some more kind of like questionable stuff like chicharrones, which are fried pork rinds, and I'm not talking about the fluffy kind that you get in a bag in the store. These were the real deal. My grandmother was Mexican, and she would occasionally get a pig's head from one of her local farmers, and she would make these fried pork rinds, and I absolutely loved them. Thinking back, I think it's probably one of the most disgusting foods you could possibly eat, but I loved them. And I also loved chicken skin, which is not good for you either because that's where all the fat is, but a good crispy chicken skin. I have to admit, I went there. And I really didn't care for beef all that much. I didn't like steak very much or anything made with beef other than hamburgers. And when I did have beef, it had to be really well done. Like, if it had any pink in it whatsoever, I wouldn't eat it, especially if it had any pink juice, blood running out of it. There was just no way I was going to eat that. But I did love hamburgers, and I loved fast food, and I'd been eating a lot of fast food when I got sick. I worked in fast food, and I would eat like a sausage McMuffin on my way to work, and then I worked at Burger King, and I'd have one of their fried chicken sandwiches, which is basically just fried chicken with tons of mayonnaise on it. And then I might have Taco Bell beef tacos on the way home from work. Nothing like this. There's no way I would have eaten this as a teenager. Of course, then nobody had heard of Kale Chips. I mean, and it actually took me many years to get to the point where I would even eat kale. I didn't like it. But I think that's because I didn't know how to prepare it. That was so good. These are so crispy. They just kind of melt in your mouth. Oh man, especially when they came right out of the air fryer, it was like, whoa. Unbelievable. And that spice on there is really good. Yum. So I did what the doctor told me, and I started eating more whole grains and tried to eat more vegetables. I stopped eating my Jif peanut butter and I cut back on both the meat and cheese, but because I liked cheese a lot and I wasn't that big of a meat fan anyway, I really cut back on the meat to the point where I basically just wasn't eating it. And I quit eating eggs and anything with eggs in it, which I was never really a big egg eater either, but I did like baked goods a lot that of course had eggs in them. So that was a little bit difficult for me. Things like cookies and stuff. Speaking of cookies, I'm gonna try one of these. Wow. Those are really good. Really nice texture and just all sorts of flavors going on in there. The tahini, cinnamon, maple syrup. Oh my gosh, these are really good. And when I was making these, I had the tahini in a cup, and then I used the same cup to measure my maple syrup in. And so then after I had poured all that in, there was some left in the bottom of the cup, and it was just, you know, maple syrup and tahini mixed together, and I was tasting it, and oh my god, it was so good. Reminded me of those like sesame candies, or like a hard candy with sesames in them. I'm gonna have to come up with some kind of recipe that highlights those two flavors because it's so good. Sweet potato sole, you did it again. These are amazing. And they worked really well in the air fryer too. Unfortunately, you can only do like 4 at a time because there's not that much room in the pan. But they cooked really quickly. 5 minutes was all it took. So I gave up eating all those foods and ate more whole grains, and after 1 month I went back for another blood test. I ended up having to take them every month until I just got to the point where I just wasn't going to do it anymore. I hated having my blood drawn. But within 1 month, my cholesterol levels had gone down to normal, kind of the high end of normal, but normal, which is amazing. 1 month of making just a few changes to my diet, and my levels went down to normal. But I kept it up, and what happened was that because I had cut back on meat so much that I pretty much wasn't eating it, when I did eat it, I got really sick again. All those same symptoms came right back, the migraine headache and the migraine stomach ache, and I just felt horrible. I mean, it was like I was just back at square one every time I ate any meat. So that only happened like maybe 3 or 4 times before I really got the clue that it's like meat is making you sick. You can't eat it unless you want to feel like you want to die. You just can't eat it anymore. And I am talking about red meat. It did take me a few more years to completely eliminate chicken and turkey from my diet, but it was really the red meat that was doing it. And so I quit eating it, and I haven't looked back since. Like I said, it's been 33 years since I ate any red meat. And I had also quit eating eggs completely. You know I'm not going to eat all this food. It's a lot of food. I was just experimenting with different things. I'm definitely going to finish this though. I think we'd be here forever if I had to sit here and eat all of this on camera. So it took a while for me to actually learn how to feed myself vegetarian style. you know, a few years because like I knew how to cook certain things, and I especially knew how to bake, but of course, because I couldn't eat eggs, I couldn't really do a lot of baking. But I was always curious to learn more. But right around the time I became vegetarian, I moved away from home for the first time. So I was 18 years old, and I moved to San Diego with some friends, and I ended up getting a job in a sort of like a fast food place, Greek food, but it was all homemade. I mean, it was all made right there and just really fresh ingredients. And so I learned how to make falafel and hummus and baklava and spanakopita, all kinds of really yummy stuff. And that was my first real experience with cooking some really good vegetarian food, and I was really grateful for the experience. But I was living on a really, really tight budget, so the food that I was buying to make at home was just really, really not good. I mean, the cheapest stuff I could find. So I was eating a lot of white rice and white bread and peanut butter and jelly and ramen noodles and not a lot of vegetables. It just wasn't the best diet. So I wasn't really losing any weight. I may have even been gaining weight at that point. And then a little while later, I ended up going to England to do a semester of school. And while I was there, it was just even worse because not only did I not know how to feed myself, but the people I was staying with didn't know how to feed me, and they were supposed to provide 2 of 3 meals a day for me. And so it was really hard, and I ended up eating a lot of cheese and a lot of chocolate and some beer because I'm in England, right? And that's what people do, is they drink beer at the pubs. And by the time I got back from there, I weighed more than I had weighed in my life. I was at 192 pounds, and I'm sure that my health was not good. My cholesterol levels were probably really high at that time, although I never went to the doctor to have it checked. And I actually think that I may have had a heart attack at one point while I was in England, and maybe even twice while I was traveling around Europe. And I won't go into detail about that, but that was pretty scary. And I don't know for sure because, you know, I was in a foreign country and I didn't have a doctor, and I didn't tell my host family about the experience that I had. They weren't there at the time when it happened. But yeah, I'm pretty convinced that I did have some form of a heart attack. Mm. 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 So simple, yet so good. And there's no oil on these. They were wet from being soaked, so all the spices really just stuck to them. And yeah, really good. Mm. So after I got back from England, I moved to San Francisco. And I started losing a lot of weight right away because there's a lot of hills there, really big hills, and I didn't have a car. So even though there's a lot of good public transportation, I walked a lot. And then one of my best friends had been living in a commune, like while I was gone in England. He had gotten together with this guy, and they had been living in a commune near Sacramento, and it was totally vegan. So he had gone vegan, and at first I was kind of like, vegan? You know, what is that? You gave up dairy? Why would you do that? You know, I really didn't understand it. But after a while, you know, he started showing me things like soy milk and tofu and soy cheese and all these like dairy alternatives and meat alternatives that I had never heard of or never used before. And it opened up a whole new world to me. And I was also in a voice class, you know, like for singing, and I was having a lot of problems with phlegm in my throat. And the teacher told me that dairy products can often create a lot of phlegm in your throat, and if you're going to be a singer, it's best to probably stay away from dairy. So I was like, well, okay, maybe I'll just give this dairy-free thing a try. And also, at about that time, my friend and his boyfriend hired me to be a personal chef for them because the boyfriend, his name was Steven, had a lot of money and they'd been eating out a lot, but they were getting tired of eating out all the time. And of course, because they were vegan, they were very limited as to where they could eat. And so they wanted somebody to cook for them because they didn't cook themselves. And even though I didn't have any experience cooking vegan food, you know, I was kind of a decent cook. So I thought, well, I'll just go for it. So I went out and bought a cookbook that I still have. And it was the first vegan cookbook I ever bought. I don't know if it's actually completely vegan, but mostly. It's this one, and some of the recipes in here are my absolute favorite recipes that I still use to this day. They had a couple other cookbooks and I just went for it. I just started cooking, even though some of the things were things I had never heard of before, and certainly never tried cooking. I think I did a pretty decent job and I learned so much. And from then on, I was able to feed myself much healthier food, and I continued to lose weight, and things just got better for me. Love those cookies. So, skip ahead about 7 or 8 years, and I was pregnant with my first son, so I was like 27 years old, and I'd been vegan for the most part because I have to admit I did cheat here and there, usually with pizza, but every time I did, I regretted it because what tended to happen was I would get really constipated from it for, you know, 2 or 3 days. I would just kind of feel it just sitting there in my gut, not digesting, and that wasn't a good feeling. So every time I ate pizza, I really regretted it. And I had tried drinking milk one time after having quit it for a while, and it gave me an instant stomach ache. So I was like, okay, yeah, I definitely won't be drinking any milk. And soy cheese at the time actually had some dairy in it. I mean, it wasn't like outright dairy, but it had, I think it's called casein in it. And I didn't know at the time that that was a dairy-derived product. So I was eating some of that. Not a lot. I didn't eat a lot of soy cheese at the time, but now there are a lot more vegan cheeses available that are actually vegan. So I was vegan when I became pregnant. But about 4 months into it, I mean, pretty much the whole time I was pregnant, from day one, I couldn't eat a lot of the foods that I was used to. I mean, I had not just morning sickness, but it was morning, noon, and night sickness. I mean, I was sick all the time. I mean, I always felt nauseous. A lot of the times would throw up 7 or 8 times a day. I mean, it was really bad, and it was that way pretty much through my entire pregnancy. And I don't think it was because I was vegan, because for my second pregnancy I was vegetarian, and I had the exact same problem, maybe even worse. But about 3 or 4 months into my pregnancy, it had been horrible because I couldn't hold anything down. I couldn't eat any of my favorite foods, you know, anything with garlic, anything with spices, anything with tomato, beans I couldn't eat. I mean, just what I was eating was like really bland foods like plain bagels, white bread, and really tangy citrusy fruits like tangerines and kiwis. I don't know what it was about those things, but I ate a lot of them. So I was actually working in a natural food store, a really cool co-op. So I was surrounded by all these really great foods, and they had farm fresh eggs there. And I guess one day I just decided that an egg sounded really good. I don't know what brought that on. I hadn't eaten eggs in 11 years. So I brought some eggs home and some sourdough toast, sourdough bread. And I had some sourdough toast and a fried egg for breakfast the next day. And that day I felt amazing. I mean, I didn't feel sick all day. I think I held my food down all day. It was just like, I don't know what happened, but it was amazing. And I'm not trying to promote eggs here, but that was my experience. And so I ate eggs for about a month, like every morning, sourdough toast with an egg. You know, it didn't always have that same effect on me, but I think I did that for about a month, and then after that I didn't have any more eggs the rest of my pregnancy. I think about twice I tried to eat cheese, and each time I immediately threw it up. It wasn't good. So, but then after I had my child, my baby, who, by the way, was born 9 pounds, and he was a week early. So not only did all that sickness not hurt the growth of my child, but certainly being on a vegan diet didn't harm him either. He was very healthy and very smart and just came out with eyes wide open, and everybody who saw him was always saying how alert he was, and he was just a really happy baby, and it ended up being just a wonderful, really intelligent and very healthy kid. And the same with my second son. So shortly after having him, though, I started craving cheese and eggs again. And I didn't just like kind of whole hog start eating it again, but I did start incorporating cheese mostly back into my diet. And I was still eating some like soy cheeses and things, but after time, I kind of decided that I preferred the regular dairy cheese, and the other kind was too expensive and it had dairy in it anyway. So I pretty much stopped eating soy cheese and just started eating regular cheese all the time, and also occasionally ate eggs. That went on for years. I didn't have my second son until 8 years later, and so by that time I was totally eating dairy, and that pregnancy was just vegetarian. Like I said, I had the same kind of problems with holding down food, but I never had problems holding down eggs, which I think is really weird, but that's how it was. There was that one. But again, my weight was really high because during my first pregnancy, I gained like 40, 45 pounds, and I never lost it. So that entire 8 years between kids, I stayed at about the same weight, which was around 185. You know, it probably fluctuated a few pounds here and there, but it stayed pretty high. And so then when I had my second pregnancy, I went up to, you know, when I was 9 months pregnant, I was probably up to about 215 pounds. And then a year after I had him, I finally weighed myself and I was at 197. And so I decided, you know, I really need to lose some of this weight. I know my health can't be good. So I just made a few little changes at that time. And I guess my body was just ready to shed that weight because it just started falling off of me. Like literally, I was losing like a pound a day without even really trying that much. And then I plateaued at about 174. And by that time, I was 40 years old, and I had not had my cholesterol tested in like 20 years. And I was feeling kind of sluggish. And even though I had lost a lot of weight, I just felt like I wasn't as healthy as I could be. And I had decided to go back to school, back to college to get my bachelor's degree. And I hadn't had any health benefits in all that time, which was one reason why I had never gotten my cholesterol tested again. But they had a clinic at the university that was really cheap, so I decided to go and have my cholesterol tested. So the results came back that my cholesterol was high, not as high as it had been originally, but high. As well as my triglycerides and my blood sugar were also high. And my doctor told me that, you know, I should make some changes to my diet unless I wanted to go on medication. And I really, really, really did not want to go on medication. I'm very anti-medication. I would rather heal myself naturally if possible, or at least, you know, using natural remedies. But if a change in my diet is what I need to do to remedy my health, that's what I'm going to do rather than taking medication, or at least I'm going to try that out first. So I knew that one of the changes I needed to make was eliminating some dairy. And I think at the time I was eating a lot of cheese and a lot of ice cream. And so I kind of cut out the ice cream, cut way back on the cheese, started working out because they had a gym at the university that was paid for in my tuition. So I was like, I should really use this. So I started working out regularly, and I lost another 18 pounds. Was feeling like freaking Wonder Woman. I felt amazing. I looked the best I think that I had ever looked in my life. I was definitely more fit than I had ever been in my life. That lasted a few years, but after I graduated, I didn't have access to that gym, and I stopped working out. And I started doing a lot of baking. I was trying to start a baking business, of all things. And so I ended up eating a lot of baked goods, and I gained several pounds back. And I had struggled with that ever since. I mean, even though I'm vegan now, I am definitely still struggling with my weight. I'm kind of at the same weight that I've been for the past few years. And I just kind of go up and down within a few pounds, and nothing I do seems to really help. Of course, I'm at an age where I'm in menopause, and I think that has a lot to do with it. It's like hormones. But at least I know that I am eating healthy and taking care of myself, and I am working out. And I know that even if I don't lose weight, which I may eventually, you know, it's just a very slow, gradual thing, that at least I'm taking care of myself and I'm eating a healthy diet. So, like I said in the beginning, I decided to go vegan again about 2 years ago, right at New Year's. I had been watching a lot of YouTube videos. I had originally just went on YouTube to look for some vegetarian recipes and found this whole vegan community, which was amazing to me because, you know, when I was vegan before, because it was San Francisco, there were people doing that, but there just wasn't as much information. There weren't all these really great products on the market. I mean, it was kind of impossible to be a junk food vegan at that time because there just wasn't all the junk food options that there are out there now. And you had to just be really careful and read labels. And I think it's really funny that Oreos are like a vegan favorite because at that time I had to consciously avoid Oreos because they actually had lard in them. I don't know when they changed, but it was like I was seeing all these vegans on YouTube eating Oreos, and I was like, Oreos aren't vegan, you know, they have lard in them, what? And then it turned out that I guess they changed their formula at some point and they don't have lard in them anymore. But you should still stay away from those hydrogenated oils because they're not good for you either. So when I became vegan again, or decided to transition back to a vegan diet, I was able to quit cheese pretty much cold turkey. There's been maybe 2 times where I had like just a tiny bite of cheese because it was like a really good cheese and I was at a party and I was just like, you know, I'm trying to celebrate something here and I don't want to like deny myself too much, so I would take a little bite of cheese and that was it. That was all I needed, was just a bite to have that taste. It took a little longer for me to quit eggs because at the time I was eating them about once a week. I just have like 1 egg once a week. And it was just this thing where, like, you know, I was working hard in archaeology and I would just crave them. By the end of a week working in archaeology, I would be just craving something a little extra. And so I would eat an egg for breakfast and I'd feel great that day. So I think there is something to that, but then there's the whole ethical issue around eggs. And like I said, when I went vegan again, it wasn't as much for my health. I mean, it was partly because of health, but it had definitely more to do with the ethical treatment of animals and the impact on the environment. So that's kind of where I am today. But it did take me about 6 months to completely quit eating eggs. So I'm really proud to say that I have been vegan for 1.5 years now, and I'm loving it. I mean, especially because I am a person who likes to cook and likes to experiment with food, and I love learning new things, and there is certainly a lot to learn when it comes to cooking really good vegan food, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I'm having a lot of fun sharing these recipes with you and sharing my lifestyle with you. And I hope you will continue to join me on my journey and that you will have a successful transition to a vegan or vegetarian diet, and I will be there to help guide you along and give you support all along the way. So please make sure that you subscribe to my channel and hit the button so that you get notified every time I post a new video. And stick around because I'm going to be bringing you some really great recipes and some really great tips. And I hope you will join me on my journey. So for now, I will leave you and maybe finish eating some of this, but I'm getting pretty full. So if you want any of these recipes, I will leave some of them in the description box below. But also check out Sweet Potato Soul's cookbook, and also click that link in the description box below to get my free vegan recipes ebook, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.